I heard a rumor today that we have actual money from a fundraiser.
Oh yeah, Austin.
I don't know how much, probably like $20, but.
So people been going to Papa John's?
Papa John's. For those of you that haven't heard, Papa John's gave us a deal, and a bunch of other groups around WSU, where they give us a code for WuLUG, and if people go to Papa John's and order pizza, and they give them the code, then how is it? They get 40% off?
They get 40% off their sale, and then 10% of the remaining sale comes back to us.
Which is awesome. That's a huge discount. All right.
Cross ramp.
So, what we're going to talk about tonight and play with is persistence. When I came down this path of like persistent Linux like 2 weeks ago, I didn't realize how big of a world that was and what it really meant. Honestly, outside of Debian, I'm not even sure how other distros do this. But Debian has their own live community that is based around building just live distributions. And part of that is the persistence. Anything that's based on Debian, it should be about the same. But anything that's non-Debian based, I don't know. This is all pretty Debian specific. So the method is, and it seems straightforward, but I've been chasing loops and fighting this, so I don't think it's as straightforward as it's saying. Overshot. The general idea is you have your hybrid ISO, that's your boot ISO, and you copy that to your thumb drive. With most modern Linuxes, that's as simple as a dd command. Is everybody in here familiar with dd? No?
Does everyone know what ISO is? Anyone not know what ISO is? Okay.
So, the dd command is a command that literally copies bit by bit. In its simplest form, it's dd, in file equals this, out file equals this. IF and OF. Your in file could be an image, it could be a drive, it could be a file, it could be, I mean, anything with data, really. And your out file could be really anything too. It is a dangerous command because it's easy to overwrite things that you didn't accidentally mean to overwrite. To show you what I did, all right, this was the command that I made to set up the first part of this. So it's dd, if for in file, and it points to my downloads folder to a Debian Live CD. And then out file is dev/sdb. SDB is this USB drive I got plugged into my laptop. Now, what would it mean if it said SDB1 instead of SDB? Or SDB2?
That would be, you'd be pushing to your partition on that disk, not the disk itself.
Right. So that's the difference. If I partition it, then each partition all of a sudden gets SDB1, SDB2, SDB3, whatever. SDB is the disk as a whole. So I'm writing this to the disk as a whole. Why on a boot CD would I want to write to a disk as a whole as opposed to making a partition and all that? Because the boot CD already has all of the information for the boot code in it. And if I write straight to the disk, then it's going to start where the boot code starts. And it's going to start copying. So it's literally going to read the boot code like it was a CD. This didn't used to work. This only works now because they call them, it's a technology that they call hybrid ISO. I'm not really sure what magic they made to make that happen. But any modern ISO, including Windows disks, are pretty much all hybrid ISOs. So you could actually do this with the Windows disk, and it usually works. I've never had it not work for me, but I also download my images from TechNet, so I don't know if that's something special or not. Anyway, so I copied the image to the disk. So let's go look at our disk and see what it looks like. This is our USB disk. That SDB1 exists. It says it's unknown because it's this weird ISO. And the ISO is 1.21. I made the second one SDB2. I made that by hand, and I named it Persistence because that's what the live CD told me. So the ISO's on there first, and then I came into gparted, and I created the second partition with all the space that was left at the end. It is a requirement that is called Persistence. So then they tell you that you have to make this persistence.conf file and put it on the persistence partition. So the persistence.conf will load whatever you put in there. It'll load, like if I, their examples aren't very good. On here in their example, they echo var cache apt into persistence.conf. So when I load it as persistence, if that's the only line in my persistence.conf, then it's only going to keep changes that are in that folder. So an obvious one would be the one above it, /home. You want /home to be persistent, and whatever else. So in my head, I'm thinking like, well, I want everything, right? There is a way to do that I haven't got to work yet. But they say that if you just do that line as a one-liner in your persistence.conf, then it should make everything persistent. There are built-in checks to keep you from doing this method up here with just a slash, because then it'd read and write too much to the USB. So this is what the documentation says works. I haven't got it to work yet. Go ahead.
So is this how you like use a USB
As a
instead okay.
So like normally if you do a USB, it wouldn't remember your changes, right?
Okay.
This way it should.
Okay.
I could get home folder and stuff to work. I almost was down to like putting every folder tree in there by hand, but I really wanted to just get the /union to work. So we'll play with that a little bit here later. And then they go into more details about more complicated setups. If you have different persistences, how you can label them and tell it to boot off of them. And then some legacy stuff. So it should be that simple. And it actually is if you just want a home folder or you just want var cache apt. But in my case, I couldn't get it to work all the way. I'm still working on that one.
Now, this is presumably a default .iso file that you've downloaded.
Yes.
Could you create your own ISO, make some changes, recreate your own ISO file, customized version, and then turn it into this persistent but live version?
Yes, and that's what I was going to talk about next. This whole live.debian.net. This is where they have an entire community of people that do nothing but that and want you to do it as well. And you can download their live builds for two purposes. One, you can just use them, or two, you can start there and tweak them, or you can follow their instructions and do your own from scratch. I didn't even realize that this whole world of Debian existed. It's a pretty cool world though. When I started getting into it and playing with it, I broke a lot of ISOs really quick.
Luckily, you can just reboot.
Right? That's the beauty of an image. So there's this whole manual that walks you through building your own Debian Live, step by step.
So it's a little bit like doing it with VMs, but you're doing it by boots.
Right. And they actually like have a whole chapter in here where they're like explaining to you how to set up a VM to test your live boot on. Because you're gonna break a lot of them while you're doing it. Just kind of trying different things.
You can do snapshotting of your VMs. This is kind of going backwards step, is it?
Let's see. Oh look, that was a piece that was gone on here. This might actually help me.
There's that though.
What was your original reason for starting to play around with it?
Mainly to get a live persistent USB for the people that come, and they're like, well, but how do I save my stuff? You know, we preach Linux, we put it on their computer, and we get them to boot off USB, and we tell them to use it, but it's kind of useless to them to use it every day if they can't save their stuff on it. So that's initially why I started down this path.
So what would be the advantage of a persistent USB install versus just a full install to USB?
So the reason that it's like this, and why it's not just install it to the USB, is because USB hardware, the actual memory chips, can't handle that many reads and writes that a full OS would do. When you boot into an operating system and you're doing stuff in it, there's lots of activity, log files, and all kinds of temp stuff, and lots of things you don't even know what's going on. It gets read and write all the time. The live image is purposely an image that is meant to be read-only. And that's kind of historical because of CDs, but modern day, they decided to keep with it for the purpose of saving the memory on the USB stick. Once there's so many read and writes, then that block is just gone. You can't use it anymore. So by adding persistence, it's a safer way to take a read-only image and still save things that are useful to it without doing the whole OS, which is going to do a constant read and write to your disk every time you do something.
Okay. So in Debian, is there the option, like in some other distributions, like in Puppy, where if you load that USB live, it loads the entire operating system into RAM?
That's normally what happens when it's just a read-only image. It loads the whole thing into RAM, and all your changes happen in RAM. And then when you shut down, your RAM gets cleared and it's all gone. That's what would normally happen. In this case, what's going to happen, it's going to load it all into RAM, and it's going to keep track of everything. And then when you shut down or when you log off, it's going to take those changes and it's going to save them to the persistent volume on this drive. And then when you load back up, it's going to look and find that persistence, and then it's going to load that into RAM. So it's like a one-off save and import-export almost. That's how you want to think of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So theoretically, it could be faster than a hard drive install. If the operating system is running from your RAM.
There's a lot of sacrifices that are made to make the operating system run just out of RAM.
Yeah.
So overall, I don't think it would be faster now. There's a lot of benefit to having a disk to store things on and cache things on. And it's I guess I don't know enough about the internal details to say exactly what, but I would imagine that they had to make significant changes to make a read-only operating system, essentially, off of a disk. Even though in RAM it's not read-only, but that's only because they had to copy all of it to RAM. And RAM is your working directory now, which...
It's dangerous when the plug gets full, you lost it.
Unless you're sort of paranoid. Yes.
There is a operating system supposedly is completely fingerprint free as you work.
So basically, you might want to use this to like
Go to DEF CON.
You come across that.
to use a modded.
If you want a
thing,
USB
see if it
stick
if it
that you
works
can
on
walk
your
up to any
before you
computer,
install it.
the idea is that you have a USB stick that has your stuff on it. So you can walk up to any computer, maybe not even yours. Like, I don't know if these are locked in here, if you can actually boot off USB, but you know, anywhere else that you can actually tell it to boot off USB. When you stick the USB in and you tell it to boot, then your stuff is there. It's your OS, your documents, your files, and you don't care what's on their hard drive or anything else. That's the idea. Or the Linux developers are constantly making these live builds because that's how they make their install CDs. That's how they distribute their system. So if you're a developer, then you're doing this for a completely different reason than the normal person that just wants to save their files. Anyway, I wanted to bring this up and talk about it tonight because that was a whole world of Debian that took me by surprise, kind of. And it seems like an important one. I would imagine other Linux distros follow some kind of method similar to this, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with the others.
Well, I don't know if you've ever used the Windows utilities to build the Linux USB drives, but typically they say if they offer persistent, it'll say Ubuntu only.
Yeah, see, that would make sense because Debian's got this figured out. And I know now after learning this, I always used to wonder, UNetbooten, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, that one.
So I used to wonder how UNetbooten did that. And going back and looking, it was a partition named persistence. They followed this exact method. So.
Do it.
Hmm?
You want to do it?
Sure, yeah. How big is this?
2 or 4.
Can I wipe it? Do I save it?
Yeah, no, it's just an arch on it, so it's old, so it's all good.
Okay, let's do one. What is that terminal?
You know, the big thing right now for smart TVs is Intel's PC on a stick, where it's everything just compressed into something that's a little bit bigger than a thumb drive.
I've actually got one of those, the compute sticks.
Yeah.
They're totally locked down. You can only run Ubuntu 10.14. No, is that right? I think they're LTS version, and Windows 8 or 10 now.
It would be 10, 14, it'd be 14, 24.
Whatever the newest LTS is.
That's the most recent LTS.
Yeah, so that's the only thing you can do with it. I got one thinking all these grand schemes I could play with it. Nah, nothing. It's locked down just like that Dell.
That's sad.
It sounds like an open hack.
There's no way around it.
Oh, John.
It's hard. It's
He has a
UEFI BIOS only, and those are
Sounds
the
like
only
an open hack
bootloaders they've hard coded into it. Very strict.
Has anybody made a third-party
In
bootloader?
theory, you could custom, swap the ROM out in the BIOS, and you could put your own UEFI code in there. But
Yeah.
is it worth it? Probably
No.
not. Just get a different computer.
Yeah. One that didn't make you do that to
Yeah,
begin with.
which they do have the Migos, which is the knockoff of it, and I believe that it is open. I haven't gotten one. I felt pretty sour about my initial purchase, so.
Company
You
now
set it
that
back?
has a stick for
I
like
want to-
$100 that will let you turn your big smart TV into a touch screen.
Whereas the little Intel NUCs,
Yeah, I like
This
those.
would be a smart TV, right?
Yeah,
they're great.
and they have i5s.
They have
Do you have an i7 in it?
i5 and i7.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful little box.
And I've got the i3 and it does full media playback
Yeah.
on Kodi, no problem at all.
I
Yeah.
didn't buy the
Full,
TV though.
1080p.
So I'm going to go to my terminal. I'm going to run the DD command. I'm going to say in file is my ISO image, and then out file is dev/sdd. I verified the STB was proper.
What about installing updates on this kind of system? Does it help you if you have persistence, or are you just not going to do it? What would be the status?
You wouldn't be able to install updates if you didn't have persistence. You could, but it would be in RAM. When you rebooted, it would be gone. If you were doing a lot with images, you could download like the nightly build and re-image your USB drive every day, and that would be kind of like keeping it updated, but that'd be like the hard way. With persistence, if you could get the whole drive to be persistent, which is possible, I just haven't figured it out, then you should be able to do updates no problem. Just update it like normal, and it should figure it out and work with it.
Can you install custom packages before you get this image on there?
Before and after, yes. You can do after in persistence, or before, if you make your own live build, you can put your own packages in.
So you can add software after.
Yeah, you can make it a strip down or as big as you want. You can do it however you like. And a lot of people that do embedded stuff, that's what they'll do. They'll do their own live builds with, only exactly what they need.
Now, presumably it mounts these persistent things. So if you had persistence of /home, but you kept changing your ISO, the underlying ISO as you were updating software and making changes,
Yeah.
as long as you kept saying use the persistent home, anything that you have as documents and things would stick around. Am I correct?
Would you have to copy them off? DD would wipe it, wouldn't it?
What are we talking about?
Well, if you were building your own ISO, and say you built it and you had persistence of /home, and you were using it as your day-to-day use system for about a month, and then you wanted to run some updates, rather than making all of the /bin and all the rest of it persistent, presumably you could go back to your initial ISO. You could rebuild a new ISO with the updates and then put it back on the flash drive. But you'd have to somehow still keep home as persistent.
That could work, but the problem you'd run into is that when you go to rebuild your ISO, it's going to be a little bit bigger than your last one. So unless you accounted for that and moved your partitions around, then you're just going to overwrite the first part of your partition. The real way around that would be to literally copy and paste the files from your image to there, and then install the boot code. That would probably be the easiest way I can think of. But then you got to go figure out what boot code's on the live CD, which it's all in there. I mean, you got to do that to make your live CD anyway.
So it's done.
Cool. What's the Linux command to sync the buffers before you just pull your USB key out? Sync. Good. That's why it took so long part of the way, because it was waiting on the buffer. It didn't have to sync anything. Alright. Put it back in. If you guys aren't familiar with Gparted, by the way, that's the best drive disk tool I found in Linux. GUI anyway.
And parted isn't bad for a command line.
Yeah.
Better than
Yep. So now we see we got 2.5 gigs left over. Let's go ahead and make a partition out of it. ext4 has to be named persistent. Still want to check that. Make sure I spelled it right.
Is the label important here?
Yes, it's crucial. Okay. So it's labeled persistence. I do it, hit apply. Let it be happy. Slow motion animation. It's gonna be like. That's full speed. All right. So we got our persistence. Persistence.com. And this is what's supposed to do all of it. If we do slash.
Are there other commands you can stick in there? I mean, I'm sure it's full of things.
It's just meant for a listing, basically, of
Directory.
what folders are going to
Yeah.
be copied to persistence. The union seemed to be a special thing for using slash.
So if you just put slash.
It won't work. That's forbidden for security reasons.
Right.
So hence the union thing. For
So
WordPress.
because you just did slash, you didn't say like just slash home. Does that make this whole directory, the whole drive persistent?
Yes, that's the idea.
Yeah, the whole system.
That's the goal.
Alternatively, you could just do like slash home and be able to start documents while keeping the system read only.
Yes. All right, we got it. This should be persistence.
What do you do?
So instead of hitting escape and getting to boot : and typing persistence, which is what the guide actually says, and has worked for me in other setups, so it's kind of an oddity. At the screen where you had to pick which one you wanted to boot, I hit tab, and that brought up like the grub boot command for the one I was on, and then I went and added persistence to the boot equals part of that, and it booted. So this should be persistent.
We'll find out.
How do you test?
Save document, reboot.
Reboot.
It's pretty. I like it. Set mouse tree.
Do you have gparted in there? Are you able to see if it's read-write access to everything?
Oh, you can do a DX.
That's true.
Yeah. Let's go, Joe. What is the root on live? Oh, I guess there is no password. All right.
Yeah. Always in the
This is a good reason why you should make your own live CD, not use theirs. There's a whole section of that guide too on changing the live user. If that's your only, you don't actually have to redo a whole live CD just to change the live user.
If it's persistent, though, you can always change this stuff or add your own later, right?
Should be able to. Maybe we should try it. Capital H?
H, yeah. Doesn't say if it's access.
Try mount. Check your
Mount
mounts.
would tell, yeah. Oof. It's all RW.
Who's happy?
Do password on the root user. See if the password sticks on the root. Well, that's interesting.
That is interesting. Okay.
What a security hole. What a joke.
Alright. We change the root password, we save the document. So let's reboot and see what happens. With persistence.
So you're gonna have, every time you boot, you have to add in change, unless you change your grub.
Right, you would have to rebuild the live CD, I think.
Well, if it's persistent, you should be able to change the grub config file.
Yeah.
I don't know if that part's persistent.
Well, maybe not.
You should try it. Oops. Missed my window of opportunity. I was talking.
No.
the other screen and show you guys this time. Alright, so what I did from here is I hit tab, and then it brings essentially the boot command, the grub goodness. And then here we have this boot equals live components quiet splash. I'm going to put persistence right there. It could go in any order, I think. I'm not sure that it matters.
So I wonder if you would have typed boot equals live space persistence, if it would have made it through.
Maybe. I wonder if I'd have to type all this other stuff too.
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
If this works, we can try that too.
Well, if this works, just edit the grep config. If that works, then it doesn't matter.
Right. That'd be ideal.
I'll kick from there.
It's pretty good. The first time I tried that method, I put persistence in its own boot equals at the end, or right before the image or whatever, right before the init, and it crashed. All right, let's see if we have a document left. Look at that. We have persistence. Let's look at the root password now. We have full persistence. That just hit me. We have full persistence. I'm happy.
And you
It
just
did not change
You
the-
just used the slash union, didn't you?
Oh, actually, that was sudo, so it wouldn't.
Yeah, your user doesn't have a password. Yeah.
Yep. We changed the root password. What was?
You said on the persistence, you just did, on the comp, you just did the slash space union, didn't you?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so it worked that time.
Yep. We have full persistence. Add a boot grow. What should I type?
Go to slash boot grub, and it should be. There's let's look what's in there first. What's in boot?
Actually, you probably want to run the grub 2. You can't change it to grub.
Doesn't look like the grub folder's in
Probably need to use grub 2 editor.
What's the command?
Okay.
Does it not put it in slash boot anymore? Do not edit.
This is the bad version.
That's what they said about the user file too.
Update-grub. Your own grub setting is stored in the etc/default/grub file. Edit this file to change grub 2 settings. Scripts are also located in etc/grub.d. And then you can use update-grub to update all the boot commands.
Problem is grub is not.
Yeah,
really
it's probably
They must be doing some magic.
There is one using
it's
grub.
probably in the boot section of the actual.
Oh no! Wait, it's.
It's on top of everything.
You really lie there?
It may not be using grub.
It was grub.
Syslinux.
Oh.
So how do you edit Syslinux? I know less about Syslinux than I do grub. I know I use Syslinux to get the Hirons Boot CD to boot on USB. That was a feat. Does anybody know what Hirons Boot CD is? He knows. There's a man that does work, I can tell. I would not be able to function every day without Hirons Boot CD. I do not have Hirons Boot
This just says it's under /boot ISO Linux or /boot syslinux.
Syslinux.cfg should be created in the same directory where you install syslinux, probably under /boot.
Yeah. Is there
I
syslinux?
don't see syslinux.
I don't see either. That's so strange. There's nothing
This is
really.
definitely boot information.
Well, let's look at these files.
They were the ones that had all the weird configs in them. This is the one we booted.
Automatically generated file. What from?
They tell you not to edit it, but they don't tell you how to edit it. Like, I mean, they don't be like, you know, edit it this way. I don't see anything useful.
Do a search for boot. These are all like yes/no questions or something. In theory, could you edit this file before you made your live disk?
Yes. It's,
And then put it
if
in
you were
the-
making your own live disk, you would actually manually tell syslinux what to do. And that's where you
So
do it.
this could be
And that was part of the guide as well. Changing syslinux after the fact, I don't know. What were all the other things we were going to try? Okay, so we can't change the boot.
Let's install a package. Let's
Oh boy. Oh,
no internet.
yeah, it would help. I did download the non-free live, by the way. It wasn't there by default.
Let's install Nemo.
Nemo? How's it spelled? Like the movie?
Exactly like you'd
Yeah. Jess had a good one the other day. She had to say something like 4 different ways, and each way she uniquely screwed it up in a way that nobody else could have. And finally she just like gave up and sat down on the floor. I gave up. I like Nemo.
Who's the update well?
You may know what Nemo is? File manager.
Yeah, if he hasn't used Cinnamon Desktop at all, you've probably seen Nemo.
On these, when you use a file manager, the first time it asks you which one you want, Nemo's an option. I really like that, by the way. No, sushi. I'll eat sushi. I don't have enough money to eat sushi.
Just catch your local fish.
Ooh.
Like a dare.
Ah, can't find anything on boot, but I found you a couple of options for your persistence.conf file.
Cool.
And it specifies union. Save the RW branch of a union on the persistence media so only the changes are stored persistently. This can potentially reduce disk usage compared to bind mounts and will not hide files added to the read-only media. One caveat is that the union will use dir from the image's read-only file system, not the real file system root. So files created after boot by the live configuration will not appear in the union. This option will use the union file system supplied by live bootloader's union boot router. So i.e. it's not always going to be
Interesting.
union.
Interesting.
You can also use link or bind. Those are alternatives.
That kind of explains too why they don't allow just slash. because then it would be no different than just doing an install. It would just copy the whole thing over.
And you don't have to use Union for just the root directory. You can use Union for things like /usr.
I saw in the guide where they had a
Is that Debian specific?
yes.
Yeah, all this.
This whole process is
Yeah,
Debian
very
specific.
specific.
Well, and any branch from Debian,
Okay.
so like Ubuntu and Mint, they probably all exact same process, I'm sure.
Not that it's really necessary though. I mean, if you wanted a Mint-like install, you just get the packages together and just install Mint.
In the guide, they had a section about if you were if you wanted to do like a persistent home folder, they had it to where what you'd have to do to mount a drive through SSH or something. So you could actually mount your home folder this way over SSH back to your home if you have internet, which is kind of cool. It might be slow, but it'd be cool for a lot of things.
You do something like persistence in a VM.
Like, what do you mean exactly?
Have a VM where you're going to do pass out virtual desktops. Set it so that the only thing that you can that would work like USB. Only the operating system would be read-only. There'd be no way to write to it. I'm just thinking if you were gonna.
You could do this exactly on a virtual machine. I mean you can do this exactly, yeah.
But if you're going to go down the virtual machine road, you may as well just use snapshotting using QEMU, KVM or something. You could create a snapshot image of your initial build and then recreate a new variant every time you do a reboot.
I did that with virtual a lot.
If your goal is to run a certain application in this virtual machine and you're trying to make it more secure so that the application can't change the OS or whatever, then that's where like Linux containers would come in. Which isn't, you're not truly doing a whole new VM. You're still using your base OS, but in the container you're running an isolated something. Or jails in FreeBSD. That'd be our BSD plugin. Docker. I read an interesting article about, it was from the standpoint of somebody that's into security, and they were talking about Docker. And they were talking about how Docker has actually caused a lot of security problems because in the Linux world, these people, if you were an admin and you were going to install this software to do something in the Linux world, traditionally, you had to know what you're doing. You had to set it up, you had to install the servers that were required to run it, you had to manually configure manually edit the config files. You were truly responsible for that setup of that software, as a sysadmin should be. But with Docker, it made it so easy for people just to hit go that they were installing all these things that didn't even make sense and causing all kinds of security problems. But they had no concept that they were even causing security problems because they had no idea what they were really installing. They just wanted this cool little app that you could download in Docker and run it. So it really like caused a whole generation of people that didn't have the sysadmin sense about it, but they're trying to do sysadmin level things. And that's dangerous.
But that's how the Windows goes.
That sounds very right. That sounds very Windows-like. I've heard this.
Do a Google search for SSH, if I remember rightly, multi-hop.
I'm working this USB stick out. All these updates.
Is it hot?
It's a little warm.
Probably that one. Check.
Top one? Yep.
looks like the one. Keep coming down a minute just so I can double check. Yeah, quick and dirty. Yeah, that's the one. Quick and dirty is the one, but then he has what you really should be doing at the bottom. The quick and dirty is what I sent you. Right, so then you should really be using your SSH config file to do this kind of stuff. And there's a great 1 hour, I think it's called Black Magic of SSH, or SSH Black Magic, which is a really fascinating YouTube video that someone did a lecture on how to do SSH forwarding. And talks about this and all sorts of other stuff. But this is a good start.
Yeah, that one line right there is
That
like
one line is really
awesome.
I can't, the underlying physical hosts that run all of our VMs, I can't log into except through one Bastion box. They're all firewalled up except to be able to access that. So I use this quite often when I want to access one of the physical hosts, and I just run this line and say SSH into Bailey with a -A, -T, and then SSH-A into Claymare, which is one of our physical hosts.
What was the name of that YouTube?
Sorry?
The name of that YouTube video?
The YouTube video, I think I posted it on our Facebook about 6 months ago.
I think I remember
But
it.
it's, if I remember rightly, it's SSH Black Magic. Let me see if I
We need to
can.
have a meeting on bots.
Yeah, the Black Magic of
That's the
SSH.
security.
SSH can do that on Vimeo. It's Vimeo, not YouTube.
Vimeo.
And I gotta watch the slow version.
Slow raise.
But yeah,
I'm not a Vimeo fan.
that takes this to a whole nother level. It's a really fascinating 1 hour to into SSH. And he talks about how to create your config file. So you just type in the initial host and it does all of the forwarding for you. It's a good one.
Which keys does that use? Does that use the originals? The like SSH keys.
And you can set it up so that it doesn't use a password, but it's not about, so you can use a host key and things as well. But the forwarding isn't about using host keys or part versus password. It's about SSHing into one host to then hop onto another host. Or you can do multiple hops. You can just hop from host to host to host to host to host, all the way down the line. If you're firewalled, if your final destination is firewalled behind other things, you can hop through multiple.
Every 10 minutes you drop.
Then you can be like, it's fine.
If I was an evil computer store owner, I would do that to customers and not
Some all the traffic through the shop.
I think your router's broken. I don't know.
My router's broken?
No. We were
Oh,
talking
yeah, yours.
about a scripted DOS's
We should buy a new one.
or something. Yeah, so the only way to get around putting persistent in the beginning boot is to make your own live, I think.
Just put it in the config from the get-go.
Yeah. So like, he's taking a breath. Does that mean we're getting close?
Or it means the thing's about to burn out.
Can't speak for Eric.
It's getting tired.
After we do this, I'm going to load up irons and show you guys since you don't, only one person knew. You guys are in for a treat next week. I guess we all are actually. It's Ben's iNode lecture, which is awesome. It's,
Which, if you guess it, it'll be on YouTube.
Hmm?
If
Oh
you
yeah,
see
it'll be
it.
on tape.
It'll be on YouTube otherwise.
What's
It's-
it called?
We call it his iNode lecture. I don't know if he has a name for it or not.
It's just a lecture about iNodes.
Yeah, it's it's about file system access and iNodes and how they work. And it's a part of Linux that usually doesn't get talked about. And I've never seen it talked about in as much detail as Ben did. So yeah, it was
It's informative.
by far the most comprehensive Linux file system and how it works lecture I've ever seen. It's really good. I think Ben said that he adapted parts of it from one of Jadley Wallach's lectures and then added his own. 'Cause it was for a security class, but he took the parts that weren't security class specific and then added everything else to it that was missing.
It was good.
Yeah, we saw it at Kansas Linux Fest last year. Any jokes?
I heard one.
I got one. So, Einstein, Newton, and Pascal are all playing hide and seek, right? So Einstein's the one counting, so he's counting. Pascal and Newton go hide. Einstein gets to the end and he looks around to go find them, and he sees Newton standing there. And Newton's got a box drawn around his feet with a piece of chalk. And Einstein walks up to him and he's like, Newton, I don't think you understand the game. You know what's going on? I found you. And Newton says, no, I am a Newton standing in a square meter. I am Pascal. Engineering joke of the day. Newton per meter squared. It seems happy. It acts happy. It looks happy.
Did you miss your persistence? Did you get it?
I got it.
Okay. I was not paying attention.
It's like lightning.
Yeah, they were there. Yeah, persistence is working good.
Did Nemo install?
It's not Nemo.
How do I switch it?
Oh god, that's the thing.
It gets a mess, yeah.
You can. It's not. You drag it into your shortcut bars everywhere.
That.
Look out.
So the upgrade stuck. It's happy.
Yeah,
Let's go look at what's actually on the persistence volume. Wherever it might be.
it's the whole thing.
You're right.
So you wouldn't be able to cover it.
Right.
Dude. You should be able to type Nemo though from there. Well, not from root. Well, yeah, I mean you could run from root. I don't know. There you go. Yeah,
There's
Nemo.
Nemo. I like Nemo. Cool. We have persistence.
I'm happy.
I'm happy. I'm really happy actually because we have full persistence. This is Hiren's boot CD. For those of you that have never seen it before, there's so much stuff here. It's amazing. So there's Mini Windows XP, which we'll boot into that here in a second. You'll see what's there. That's actually the most useful feature on this disk. There's some DOS programs, some old goodies that you probably haven't seen in a decade. A Linux, it is the parted magic, but it's a full Linux environment. Some memory tests, a couple different ones. Windows password changer, you don't even have to boot into Windows to do it. Con boot, Seagate Disk Wizard, which is useful when you got a Seagate disk that's crashing. I don't know Plot Boot Manager, I don't use it.
That's in between the BIOS. If you can't boot from a USB drive on a computer because it doesn't recognize it, it runs in between the BIOS and the boot USB. So you typically would load it on a floppy, and as you boot to the floppy, it transfers the BIOS right over into the USB.
So if you have like, so if you have an old 486.
So if you have an old computer that's so old it can't boot USB.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, I'm sold, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I need that.
And TLDR is missing. Actually, like half the time that doesn't fix the TLDR problem, but the other half the time it does. But when that doesn't, I go into the mini windows and fix it from there. Boot and nuke, it's a good one. Don't abuse it. And then a bunch of just boot options for like different things that might be there. That are like hard coded in. You can override the Windows Boot Manager but still boot to the Windows drive if it's on the computer. Anyway, let's get into Windows, mini Windows XP here. Like every computer I fix, this is almost the first thing that gets loaded. I just put this in, and almost everything I need to do, I can do without actually loading their OS. So you're in a full Windows XP setup. Well, you're in a mini, but it's fully functional. And then there's this menu that is just full of utilities. I mean, just everything.
So we got a McAfee removal tool.
Reload the master boot record.
Do what?
That one. Reload the master boot record.
Yep. I like to use.
It changes a lot since I used it last.
Well, he updates it all the time.
Yeah.
MBR fix. That's the one I like to use. But obviously, you have options here. More password reset tools. Oh, that's cool. The BIOS master password generator. Sometimes you come across like, I know there were some Dells and I think some HPs that I don't know what would cause it, but it would like lock the BIOS, and it was like a manufacturer password. And supposedly there's no way around it, but yeah, that's the way. Well, one time I had a customer bring me a laptop, and they told me that they had taken it to KPM in Winfield and to Best Buy, and both of them told them that there's nothing they could do, that they would have to basically buy a new laptop or replace the motherboard. They brought it to me, and like in 10 minutes, I was done. And I was like, I don't even feel like I could charge you for this. And they're like, here's $100.
There's actually two ways to do it. There's that way, and then there's a terrifically hard way. Take the computer completely apart, and then attach everything, and then jumper two legs on an IC on the motherboard as you press the power button.
Hopefully you get that right the first time.
Right.
Oh no, it takes 25 times at least to get it right. Or then you can do that in 10 minutes. Oh man.
Router password. I think it's just a list, actually.
Oh, it actually does some searching though.
Oh, I should stop this.
You can't. There's no stop button.
Sorry, Ben. Oh no, it is just a list.
That's kind of cool though.
Yeah, it just default or standard usernames and passwords for different brands. Pretty big list.
No, that's actually very cool.
That's nice for the off-the-wall brands that you don't come across very often.
Yeah.
I don't know, just a whole bunch of stuff.
Tweakers.
I haven't even used like most of this.
Edit the host last night. Yeah.
I use Victoria a lot to do tests on hard drives. I use the MBR a lot. I use the password reset a lot. I use ClamWin in here because it'll scan remote drives. I never really got Combo Fix to work or Malwarebytes because they don't load the registry to scan the computer, which is where most of the spyware is, or at least that's where it's found.
Yeah, Combo Fix relies on the registry.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think there is a way to do it though. I've just never really played with it enough.
You should be able to
I think it's
set
like a
combo
register-
fix up at boot time though, so that it just starts running before everything else gets loaded.
That might be why it's there.
Yeah. Not that you don't test it here, but.
Tor browsers on there.
Just in case you were some anonymous browsing.
Norton removal, McAfee removal. Clary's in here? Oh, CClear? No way. Whoa.
Yeah,
But
it won't be able
it's-
to do anything.
Right, it's not talking to the actual.
How do you, can you set that up on here? Is there a way to set up your master partition that you want to work on in case there's
I think there is a way. I think somewhere in these tools there's a way to actually load the registry from the computer and then make all these tools think that it's talking. But I've never.
Oh, it's probably that browse folder button to select your.
I'm gonna download that right now.
Dude, Hirons is amazing. You got a USB drive? I'll copy it. Quick.
As quick as USB goes, at least.
No, I don't. I can get one.
It's kind of hard to find because you go to his website and it's not apparent where to actually download the ISO. At least I always have trouble.
I can just look at the. I can just look at the source and figure it out.
Let's go to the website.
When I first started in web page management and whatnot, that you had the editor, you didn't have any, so you had to pay attention to where things were. So it just kind of sticks.
So this is like the guy's actual website. There's a download button now. That just takes me to this page. This is a Facebook page. He updated his website. It's all different. Yeah, see, easy. It's easy to get to now, so no worries. This is an old one. Wasn't it up to 15.4? Maybe not.
Center that in the web page.
Did you go to that hirons.org as well?
Do what?
Did you go to that hirons.org as well?
Yeah, that's where I went first.
Yeah, it's like a super highway for for spyware and malware.
Yeah, I noticed that when I clicked on it. Ooh, see?
Foot Locker.
Dude, I had to like, it took me a bit to click out of all the pop-ups and there was a voice that was playing saying I need to clean my computer now. Try it out, man. Just go to www.hirons.org.
That's where I just went. It took me to Foot Locker.
Dangerous.
See where we go this time.
Oh man.
Oh.
Yours didn't throw up all sorts of red flags. Mine did. It was rough.
It might not be.
It's like the lottery. Let's see if we can get Foot Locker again. No.
It's too bad.
Oh look, free antivirus.
Yeah, that's what
I'm
it
looking
is.
for.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a new phishing email coming out in PayPal.
Hiron.info.
Is that where I went?
That appears to be the real one.
Oh yeah, this is the old school page.
That's not what I see on my screen.
I got a bicycle.
Are you Hiron or
Yeah.
Hirons?
Singular?
That's not what you see on your screen?
No.
This is the old Hirons page that I
Mine says
remember.
15.2
Okay.
version at the top.
This is like the guy's personal page, I think.
This, I see what you see, Chase.
Yeah, 15.2.
Oh, there's the data.
Yeah. And this is the one where it's kind of hard to find the download. The actual download link. Yeah.
This just has all the tools that are on it.
I think this was the guy's personal page, and this is where it was forever. But then I think that other page, they moved it to. I think he got a little bit more support. I think he got some people helping him. Because there for a while, like, all these tools were broken and it was outdated. And I mean, the guy's got a life, I'm sure. it's a lot of work to keep up with all those.
Yeah.
But then he had some people help him, and then the 15 came out, and then now it's 15.2. For some reason, I thought 15.4. What else?
So is it that Hiren's bootcd.org? Is that accurate?
Yes, that is an accurate one. Was there other Linux stuff we were going to do tonight? Got out of time, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. A couple minutes.
1 minute
1
left.
minute.